Alright, so let's talk daily carbon plate trainers. Which one is the better shoe? Is it the Nike Zoom Fly 5 or is it the Adidas Boston 11? Let's compare and contrast and let's find out. So before we get into the video, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, if you're subscribed watching this content. Thanks so much, love you guys a lot. Make sure you follow me on Instagram and Strava for all sorts of other updates. Without further ado, let's begin. Specs right up here for both shoes, and as we just go right into it, we'll compare some of the general specs involving stack heights, materials, and things like that. But right off the rip, if you're an elite athlete, this is an illegal shoe to race in just because we have the 41mm stack height in the heel. I believe we have what is something around 32, 33 in the forefoot, giving it about an 8mm offset, which is a pretty standard stack height for, I guess, Nike daily trainers involving road racing shoes with a carbon plate, because the Vaporfly follows this model. I guess some of the other shoes that I can think of right off the top of my head, I think, well, the Tempo Next Percent's about 10mm. I digress. A lot of them do follow the 8mm stack height in this kind of case. So that's something going on here worth noting. There is a carbon plate running all the way across the shoe. This is one huge stack of ZoomX foam also on the shoe, and then we have some enhanced reinforced mesh on the top of the shoe with some decals going on the inside that's protecting the toe box just from any sort of strenuous activities that would involve ripping this material in this particular case. Other things to note is that the tongue is not gusseted, it is just like a flat straight across piece, and the textile here on the top does kind of create a little bit of, I guess, discomfort if you're tightening the shoe way too much in this area. So as you tie it and you practice with the shoe, you just got to feel the particular areas out and see the proper fit that would be for you as a runner. So that's the real thing to note there. I didn't notice any heel strip or heel slip in this particular shoe. The lock is great for the most part. It's not like the best lock I've ever had, but it takes a little while again to kind of work yourself into it because this tongue does have a little bit of plush, so you do need to essentially do it a couple of times until the plush takes form of your foot in whichever way or shape you've got it locked in. So that's just something to note with this particular shoe. So fit is good. Could it be better? I'm sure it definitely can. But that brings us into what I like about the Boston 11s. So specs, I guess, right away before we get into some of the things I like and dislike. We do have a heel stack height, again, of about 40mm with a forefoot stack height of about 31.5, giving it about an 8.5mm stack height, which again, not bad. It just, again, following sort of our standard model, but leans to have more of that sort of calf emphasis by raising it just that smidgen slightly, right? We do have, again, two different foams running all the way across. We do have a plastic or nylon carbon plate sandwiched in between both of those plates, or between both of those foams, sorry. And then we do see the plate as it is quite visible right there in the shoe. And the two foams we got is this light strike here at the bottom, which just resembles, I guess, like an Infinity React type of responsive, more, I guess, rigid foam that's supposed to take more impact, more miles, not necessarily be as fast, but give you kind of that comfort. And then we have this Light Strike Pro at the top, which is to resemble more of your ZoomX style foam in Nike's case, where as you kind of dig into it a little bit more, it's going to sink in more, but you're going to have a much larger kick away from the shoe just to have that rebound essentially with the carbon plate or the nylon plate working in tandem just to give you a nice snappy rebound while you're running. So that's at least the goals. Whether that's the case or not ultimately depends on your running strike, but I would say as long as you're a midfoot to forefoot kind of striker, that nylon plate's going to do you wonders in this particular shoe. Now, when we talk uppers, we do have this one layer of, I guess, like a slightly reinforced mesh that's just basically running all the way across the shoe. It's, I would say, pretty decent. As I've mentioned in previous videos, I have ripped this shoe to the point where getting the lock in this particular foot is a little bit more difficult than usual. It's getting to the point where I may have to retire this shoe early. Nevertheless, that's kind of one of the cons of the shoe here right now, is that just this upper material will falter with bad running habits. So in my case, I do have a slight supination that occurs. But to be fair, the shoe also encourages that supination. As you can see, the shoe angles a little bit out that way now that you see it, to encourage you to not have so much pronation, but give you a little bit more, I I guess, like an outer foot strike support, and as a result of my running strike, that's just something I'm kind of seeing as I start running with it, that I will tear this upper if I'm not careful. And it has happened, and it's too late. Now I'm just going to run it to about 200, 250 plus miles and see if, again, I can continue running in this thing, or if it's just one and done and it's over for the Boston 11. But nevertheless, continuing on, we do have a gusseted tongue. Not a whole lot of material on it, just to give you that one kind of easy, slight fit in the shoe. And we don't have a lot of material supporting I guess your ankle as you're already in the heel cup of the shoe. But the fit of this shoe is like almost excellent. This inner sock that's in the shoe, if you can kind of see it on the sides here, gives it a nice snug fit when you're in this thing. And I really enjoyed the streamlined fit of the shoe and being able to run and ride in it in a really fun way. And it was unlike any shoe I've had in the last maybe year or so, because I was running a lot of Nike brands. I was in the Hoka brand for a little while. So having something like the Boston 11 really kind of changed my perspective on some of the nice fits you can have with certain running shoes. And I've really enjoyed this fit, and I hope when I get into the Boston 12, which is going to happen for sure, that the fit is in a similar kind of state. So fingers crossed we're going to get to that point, and it's going to be pretty sick. So, anything else do I need to address? No, I don't think so. Again, it's a really awesome shoe. Just I, again, kind of wore it to the point where the upper is pretty much ripped, so that's going to be a massive con in this particular case. But, if you had to choose between both shoes right now, which shoe should you pick? And I guess in this particular case, it really does kind of depend on a few factors. One, I'll start with budget. I guess that's a good place to start. The year I'm filming this, it's 2023. This is the month of July. This shoe, I think, is still running about $180 to $200, whereas you can buy the Boston 11 for about $50. So in a price point perspective, even though this is like the last year model of the shoe and this is the up-to-date model for Nike, the Boston 11 is significantly cheaper. Granted, it looks like if you have bad habits, you will damage the shoe quickly, because we're 300 plus miles in. There's no upper damage on this shoe. We do have a little bit of smooth rubber, as you can see on the bottom of this shoe, but again, I'm about 100, 150 almost on this particular pair, and I'm like really destroying them quite quickly. So that's just something to consider, that maybe you're going to end up like cycling through possibly 2 or 3 different Boston 11s in the span of one Zoomfly 5. Okay, so that's that piece. Second, which one has the more responsive carbon plate? As of right now, I think with all dynamics considered, I think the Boston 11 has a much smoother, streamlined ride than the Zoomfly 5. Couple of things as to why that is. Number one, this shoe is quite stiff, but it's not bad. It takes a little while to break in, but once you've got it broken in, you're going to get a nice ride overall with the shoe. But it took a little while to get, some of that snap that I was looking for in the shoe, and in the process, I was getting a lot of irritation from this textile shoelace upper piece, which was kind of drilling into the top of my foot and making for a discomfort in my daily run and ride kind of style. So the toe box was like an okay size as well. Didn't have any toe cramming or anything like that, but the stiffness of the shoe did cause a major issue. And even now, as I'm thinking about it, like riding in the shoe in its current condition will not only just be stiff, but it's going to have some slip to it, and it's just not going to be good overall. Whereas in the Boston 11, I had that snap almost immediately. Everything about the shoe was kind of working in tandem. Both light strike foam composites were having a good time while I was running in the shoe. The nylon plate wasn't too aggressive. It wasn't too stiff. It did have just enough bend for me to have a really nice run with it overall. And even with this like Continental rubber, I didn't experience like any slip at all. It was just had a great snap, and the ride with it was just perfect, as far as like daily carbon plate trainers go. And I guess the last piece, we talked about budget, we talked about ride. I think those are the two main ones that we're really concerned about. I guess like in terms of goals, like you would probably use these for the exact same type of purpose, right? You would use them for training with a carbon plate racing shoe in some sort of way or fashion, or it's going to be your substitute for race day, right? That's probably where we're going to have a bit of a split in our categories, right? Where like the Zoomfly 5 is probably better fit for training for the Vaporfly Next Percent, if that's going to be like your race day shoe. So there's like the Next Percent 2, 3, you know. This shoe has closer specs to those shoes than I would say the Boston 11, where the Boston 11, as I suspect, is going to have specs closer to like the Adi Zero family shoes, right? So both of those carbon plate trainers have a big split, so that's going to be another thing to depend on. Is like, it's not to say you couldn't cross these into, like, if you have the Zoomfly 5, you couldn't buy the Adi Zero as your race day, and the Boston 11 for your Vaporfly Next Percent shoe. That's actually what I've got going on right now with the Boston 11 setup. It's just that they're better suited for the same brand of daily trainers by, you know, by design, because why would they make them cross-worthy when you can just buy two shoes from the same brand? So that's just something to consider, of course. But yeah, at this point in time, if I had to choose between any of these two daily trainers, I like the Boston 11 just a smidgen more, just because, again, I like the streamline of the shoe. I love the carbon plate foam setup, or nylon plate setup overall in between this particular shoe's design. Despite the rip in the shoe, I like this ride that's presented in the shoe overall. It's not too stiff, it's super comfortable, it's streamlined, and yeah, I've liked it so far. As far as things go, I'm just gonna ride it until the wheels kind of fall off on this thing, and you know, if my foot starts sticking out and I can't get the lock in this foot, then it's over, you know. Then I've run the shoe as far as I could before it's torn up, and that's kind of just it. So if you agree or disagree with the assessment, let me know in the comments below. But yeah, if you have similar experiences between both, or you think that the Zoomfly 5 is just the more dominant shoe between the two, also let me know in the comments below. But I will leave this video here, so thanks again for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.